In this session, we'll take a look at the facade pattern. Facade is one of the best known patterns, also one of the most misused patterns. What I'll do in this session is I'll introduce the facade pattern using a general example. I'll also show how the facade pattern can be applied to a domain object, and then I'll warn you against bad uses of the facade pattern. I won't implement anything in Java in this because there is really nothing special about Java and the facade pattern. When you study a traditional object-oriented system, the domain model is often where you find also the behavior. That is, you have some arbitrary object graph. It can be very complex. And as a client, it's very difficult for me to know exactly where I'm supposed to go to invoke a function. This particular problem was prominent in languages such as Smalltalk, for instance, where you had that. But you also see it push today towards more domain-driven object structure or behavior-rich domain models, as they're often called. So the question for a client here is, which one of these objects am I supposed to invoke to get some business functionality done? In these situations, the design pattern facade can come to our aid. The idea here is to make it very easy for the client and provide an interface that is specifically designed for their use case, or maybe for a set of use cases. It takes away the ambiguity as to where to go or which is the correct object to invoke to get some business functionality performed. All we need to do as a client is to look at that one object, namely the facade. The introduction of a facade has two main benefits. One is that it makes it easier for the client. It gives the ones that build the implementation a chance to refactor without affecting the client. Let's take a look at another example also. Here I have an editor which has a clipboard, a canvas, shapes, and I'll just build a simple type model for that. Now the details of the class diagram here is not that important, but just imagine at runtime, if someone wants to use this editor framework, we would have an instance of an editor, an instance of a clipboard. There might be a set of shapes on the clipboard. The editor may have multiple canvas. Perhaps one of them is the current canvas that they work on, and the canvas would have a shape. There would be a complex object graph existing at runtime. The various classes would also have behavior. So for instance, perhaps the clipboard has a copy method that clones all the shapes on the clipboard. Perhaps the shape has some polymorphic create method, static method on the shape. And then we have perhaps a select method on the shape that allows the shape to show its outline that it is selected. And let's also say that the canvas has a select region method. Now, if I'm a client using this framework, I might find it hard to use. I don't know exactly how to get to the various objects, and I need a full understanding of the underlying domain model that was created by the designer. And also that it's too hard to figure out which object to send a message to get some business behavior performed. In this particular situation, it would be natural to try to find one of the domain objects and have it play the role of a facade. In this particular example, I would probably have chosen the editor as it knows where the other objects are. It's a natural API for the client. So I would elevate the methods on various objects within my framework and put them on the editor. Let's start with the clipboard. The copy method, I would put that in the editor. Now, the editor wouldn't do the actual copy work. All it would do is forward to the clipboard. Another method that we might want to lift to the facade is the select region method that is currently on the canvas. Now the editor would have to do a little bit of work here. He would need to know exactly which is the current canvas, but that would be a natural thing for the editor to do already. So what we would do is basically just have it find the current canvas and then forward the message of selecting a region to that canvas. We're taking all the methods that a client might want to invoke on objects within the framework. We're lifting that to a single object that the client can use. And notice in this case that I've picked a domain object, a natural object. And I love it when I can do that with the facade. However, sometimes that is just not possible, and we may have to create some kind of API for the facade. But if there is a natural domain object, that would be the best choice in most cases. Here is a bit of warning though. Sometimes designers claim to be using the facade pattern when what they really are creating is a monolithic monster object, God object. The idea of the facade is for it to be very light. What it's trying to do is just be an API. It's trying to look up the right object to send the message to. I think it is an anti-pattern when the facade starts having a lot of business logic. That could happen if the facade is a natural domain object, but at least its facade part should be very light. A traffic cop that simply forwards messages to other objects.